the more I get to know Cubans, the more I like them. Your heritage is an awesome, heritage. I don't know very many Cubans, but the ones I do know are effervescent. They're funny. They're full of life, and they're just great people. And you've been a great, great friend for a long time.
Yeah.
I want to get started off by, your family's heritage in Cuba. You were born there. Take me through those early years and the exodus that your family and all these other Cubans had leaving Cuba once Castro took over, and I think it was in '59, early '60s.
Right. As you know, I know what I've been told because I left when I was 4 years old, and my father had moved to Cuba after high school in New York, in Brooklyn, where he grew up,
But that's a weird transition right there. He moved from New York to Cuba. Why?
Yeah, my grandfather was a photographer, and he had a photography studio in Cuba and in New York.
Okay.
So he was familiar with Cuba from all his travels, going back and forth. And when he graduated high school, he decided he wanted to go to Cuba, and that's where all the hot chicks were. So he moved to Cuba and ended up marrying my mom, and then having me. And that was right during the Castro change over. And by the time I was 4 years old, they had decided, they saw the writing on the wall, and they were able to leave on a commercial flight and take one piece of luggage with whatever they could put on it and $500 cash. And they left all their possessions. They left everything else there. The apartment building that my grandfather owned and a photography studio. And, they had a good life there. And they left and came to Miami.
Same story as Chico.
Very, very similar.
His family is very wealthy.
Yeah.
Just without the Mercedes.
Right?
Yeah. He came with a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So then what was the transition like? How'd you get into fishing?
Well, pretty funny story. My dad really hated fishing and didn't think fishing was even an option. We played baseball, and I played baseball straight through college. And every day my dad would be playing catch with me and hitting baseballs.
Because that's like the national sport, right?
It was.
in Cuba?
Yeah.
Right.
Certainly. And he coached my teams and all that stuff. So he was very interested and very involved with me in my growth, but not in fishing. He really disliked fishing. So one day he just thought, he had two sons, me and my brother's 5-6 years younger. And he said, well, I should take my sons fishing.
That's what fathers do.
I was 10 and my brother was younger, and he went to the bait and tackle store on Tamiami Trail, and he bought a cane pole, and the cane pole came rigged with a bobber and a hook. And we didn't have extra hooks. I mean, just one hook. Whatever. That's what came with it. So and a little box of worms, and we went on to Tamiami Trail, and I put the cane pole down, and eventually I caught my first little bass that was probably about 8 inches long, 9 inches long, and I flipped out. I just absolutely freaked out. I was like, damn, this is what I want to do, and I'm fishing with a cane pole and whacked this thing up on the shore. There was no grace to it whatsoever. And I just got overwhelmed by it.
That largemouth bass changed your life.
Changed my life completely. And my dad changed my dad's life, because now he had to take the boys fishing, because all I wanted to do was go fishing. That's all I talked about from that day on. It was, take me fishing. I got to go fishing. And of course, him not liking it became kind of a
contentious thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, let's go play baseball.
But where was your mother? What role was she playing with your?
So she ended up going on one of the trips with us and loved it too. So she's the one that ended up taking us fishing. Like when I was 12 or 13, I was fishing all the lakes around South Miami area, and but we had discovered Rickenbacker Causeway, and that's where the mackerel were. And that's a whole nother thing, catching saltwater species that actually fight and run, and you can catch on artificial. So I kind of progressed into that, and she would be the one driving us to the bridge, because my dad hated fishing. And so, and then so I would be there, and she would learn from some of the old guys there. They would take her under their wing, and say, this is how you fillet a fish, and this is how you catch the snappers down here, and we made a day of it on Saturdays or Sundays. And,
so it became a food source.
It definitely brought fish home, and it became the thing to do on a weekend, when it wasn't baseball season. So
you were reading all the magazines and trying to gather as much intel as you could, and you were just hooked.
I was hooked, and got my first boat by the time I was 15, and had some pretty good adventures on that aluminum.
What were some of the adventures?
Aluminum John boat. Well, we'd go, we would go out, and when I didn't have a car, obviously at 15, I couldn't drive. So I had this idea that I wanted to fish flamingo, and my uncle had taken me to flamingo a couple of times on his boat, and I kind of knew the area a little bit, and I was starting to learn it. And my dad, would just like, no, I couldn't spend a whole day out there with the mosquitoes and all the stuff. And so I said, okay, look, just take me, drop me off, and then come back and get me the next day. He goes, what are you going to do? I go, I got tents, I can camp, I can, set it up. I'll take my brother, and he can come with me and he can learn. And sure enough, he would drop me off on a Saturday morning. We'd get up early. He'd drive my rig down with my aluminum boat with a 25 horsepower, and we'd go and put it in the water, and we'd go exploring Whitewater Bay, Shark River, all the stuff out front.
You were free
to do whatever I wanted to do, set up our tent right before dark. And sometimes I was by myself doing this. And then he'd come on Sunday evening and pick up the boys, and we'd load up the trailer and go home, and I'd sleep the whole way home.
You know what? That's really awesome in the fact that a lot of fathers in today's society would never allow their kids to get too far away from home just because of the elements now. It's a different world.
It is.
I remember growing up in Aspen, I was like 12 years old, and I'd go, and our house was right on the road to Maroon Lake. Maybe even younger, maybe like 10. And I'd get my fishing stuff because I was a freak for fishing. And I'd stick my thumb out, and I'd hitchhike up to the lake. I'd spend the whole day at the lake, and then I'd come down. And then eventually I got a piece of visqueen. And they told me that there was a high mountain lake, called Willow Lake. And it was kind of up and around this corner. And like when I was 12, I had a backpack, and I'd backpack up into this lake and spend the weekend up there by myself under this piece of visqueen. And when it would rain, oh my God, it was terrible. No sleep, soaking wet, shivering my ass off, and you'd wake up and you'd try to make a fire, but there's no firewood. You're above tree line and everything's wet. But that's what we did. And we had parents that allowed us to go out and be adventurous, knowing that this is part of growth. And unfortunately, you don't see a whole lot of that anymore.
No, you don't see that much of that at all. In the Keys, you see that to a degree. You definitely see that the kids, we've got some of the best fishing kids right now that I've ever seen in the Keys. The young kids here, it's hard to even compete with them.
They're so good.
They're so good.
Now, what are they doing differently? Because these spots better than anybody.
Yeah, but it's not even knowing those spots. They're finding out newer ways of catching fish in different places, and not traditional old school spots, but they're figuring it out, and they're spending all their time fishing. And
how old are these kids now?
16 to 19 to 20. Some of them are starting to guide now.
Right, Paulie
Ross.
Yeah,
fantastic kid.
But what's interesting too? They're not specific to the backcountry or to offshore. They do it all.
They do it all.
Right?
Yep.
It's like Richard Black.
Yep. Richard Black does it all. Yeah.
It's funny because
does it all great.
Yeah. Jared Raskob says, this guy's unbelievable. I can go catch this and that, and somebody might catch a grand slam. But this kid will go offshore and catch a sailfish and maybe a marlin and catch a big grouper, and then come back in and catch 14 bonefish, 150-pound tarpon, and a 26-pound permit by noon.
Right, right.
He says he's like the new Ralph Delf.
Yeah. I'm sure, and Paulie Ross is right in those steps too. And you're hearing a lot of new names, but I think that right now, even before Jared's day, because he was great as a kid also, but and we all knew it. But now I think there's a whole crew that has seen the Jareds of the world, right, come up and be successful, be on TV, do all the great things that he does, and then they're inspired. They know it's possible.
Sure.
And a lot of their dads are charter boat captains, so they're offshore
So
guys.
they have a DNA.
Yeah.
The whole family. You tell a story about your boat and you started going offshore. Is there one particular story I'm thinking of, and you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It might have been the last straw that broke the relationship of fishing between you and your father.
Yeah. We had talked my dad into buying a boat before I got my own, and he bought this old boat that didn't run very well, and the motor broke down all the time. And when it did run, we finally got to get out and go out to Fowey Rocks off Miami and start deep jigging. I had read about deep jigging and putting down a jig with a whole ballyhoo on it and putting it down. You couldn't put down a full bait down to the bottom in 120 feet of water without getting bit
By something.
Yeah. I mean, it was so full of fish. We had caught, after that, I caught African pompano and all kinds of great species sailfish and everything, doing that same technique. But so on this particular day, I put down a jig and hooked this fish, and I had never caught an offshore fish before. And I'm fighting it, 20, 30 minutes on this. You can imagine old gear in the 70s, early 70s. And the tackle wasn't very good, monofilament lines with tons of stretch. And I'm fighting this fish, finally get it close to the boat. And now I realize it was a bonita, and not a big deal.
But it's a blue marlin in your eyes.
Yeah, it was like a blue marlin for me, and at the time, and the bonita's coming up, and my dad takes out this gaff, and I had never seen a gaff before, and I guess he read a little bit too, and knew enough to buy a gaff, so he had this shiny new gaff, and he was prepared to get this fish in the boat for me, and goes over to stick him, and as the fish rolls over, he sticks him, and doesn't do it quite hard enough, and it just pinches him, and the fish like zooms out, and the line touches the gaff and breaks the line. And I was like, "Oh my God, man, you lost my fish." That was the biggest fish I ever had on, And from that moment on, and I must say the whole family chimed in on this, So they were all on him like, "Oh my God, what did you do? How did you do that?" And it wasn't
How dare
much.
you?
It wasn't much longer before he bought me my own boat, and
And that was the
sent me-
last time you fished with him.
and sent me on my way. It might have been the last time, yeah.
So, tell us about the fishing. What was fishing like on your John boat when you went down to Biscayne Bay and Flamingo back in the olden days? I mean, how good was the fishing?
It was really good. It was most of us that lived in the Miami area kind of started off in the Stiltsville area.
Like Bob Branham.
As far
John
as
Boat.
I'm sure Bob did too, and Rob Fordyce and all the guys that I knew growing up in that area. And we would fish Stiltsville, and every flat from Stiltsville to Soldier Key was a tailing bonefish flat at whatever tide was a good tailing tide. They all had different depths, and you had to kind of know the tide, but you could find tailing fish on every one of those flats, and I mean a lot of them. You could look across and see them. There's mutton snappers behind rays, common. There were so many mutton snappers in those channels. If you wanted to jig them, you could jig them, and so it was much better, of course, than it is today. But we all know
It's not like you were going to go out there and just catch all the bonefish in the world. It was still a little bit specific.
Oh, and they were still hard,
Right.
And they were bigger fish. They weren't little fish. We didn't have little fish that I can think of, except for maybe over in the western part of the bay. Anywhere from there to the Upper Keys.
How did the fly rod come into your repertoire?
In that John boat, I guess I was 15. I lived in the same neighborhood in South Miami that Ralph Delph had grown up in.
Pfluger.
Chico, Pfluger, all those guys, all the guys from the old Miami Rod and Reel Club, Stu Apt. Everybody grew up in the same same area, General Kendall, South Miami area. And I had read about him in magazines and the fly fishing and all that. So I started on my own with a fly rod. And I look back, or I think back at those times, and I think, man, I really couldn't cast that good. I wasn't very good. I kind of slapped it out there and caught my first bonefish on fly out of my John boat. And I was by myself. And I was really, talk about being excited. That really, I caught the bug there. And then, of course, by then I was already exploring the Keys,
Right.
And kind of putting the whole map together from Miami to Key West and the Flamingo area.
Did you learn all this by yourself, or did you have a buddy? Like, was Rob Fordyce a friend that you guys explored together with, or who?
So Rob was 16 when, because he's 10 or so years younger than me. So Rob was 16 when he and I started exploring, but I was already in my mid-20s by then. But Rob and I learned Hell's Bay together, and we learned a lot of Key West together. We would go off on trips, and at 16, he was as good as any of the guides were at that time.
I think he became master angler.
He was.
At a very young age,
He was
right?
master angler of the Met Tournament, unguided.
Right.
So he did that with a bunch of different people
Right.
that surrounded him, taking him to different places. But he himself knew as much as anyone.
Tell me about living with Rob. What was that like? I mean, I can only imagine.
So you guys were roommates for a while.
So we were roommates for a while. When Rob started guiding, he had just finished his baseball career at the University of Tennessee, and he got injured, and he called me on the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm leaving." And I said, "Well, get your license, come down here and start guiding with me." I was living in Isla Morada, renting a house, and I said, "You just come down here, we'll get business," And so he came down. We rented a house together. Before that, we rented a hotel, like a two-bedroom hotel room, and so we basically. Our day consisted of getting up early to go fishing. That's how it started. We'd go back and we'd take a nap. We'd go work out. We'd go to the gym every day. And then we'd go out to dinner, and we'd stay out till about 3 a.m. And
there was no partying going on.
There was a lot of partying going on. Yeah. And we had a great time.
Rob tells me the story where because he's always been a big hunter.
Yeah.
Tell me the story. Wasn't there an alligator involved at some point in your relationship?
Yeah. We're roommates in Isla Morada, and we're renting a house, and our rental is upstairs, and we made a makeshift gym downstairs so we wouldn't have to go to the gym. So that eliminated one of the trips. We'd have more time to go out at night. So, and I was out on a date. And I knew that it was a rainy day. We'd canceled our trips. Rob had stayed home to tie some flies. And he was fishing a guy named John Tebbets, who eventually won the Hawley with him, and a great plastic surgeon from Texas. And Tebbets was a little nuts, and Rob is a little nuts too. And they decided on this rainy day to go up to Tamiami Trail and shoot stuff. And so they went, and I'm not going to give any details so nobody gets into trouble of where they were and what they did. But when I came home from my date, and it was still raining and nasty out, it was 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I have this somewhat strange girl in the car, and we pull up to the driveway.
Somewhat strange in what way?
Well, no, I didn't know her well.
Okay, all right.
At this time, and so as we pull up to the driveway, there's an alligator in my driveway, and I'm like, "What the hell is an alligator doing in my driveway?" And she's like, "Take me home.
I'm out.
Get me out of here." Take her home. I come back, throw a rock at the alligator, because it's kind of posed in a weird way. And I throw a rock at it. It's like, okay, it's dead. So I walk up and I'm already thinking, oh, what do these guys do? What's going on here? And so dead alligator in my driveway. So I go upstairs and here's Rob passed out, and Dr. Tebbets is in one of our bedrooms, and I said, Rob, what's going on? He goes, he says, you ain't seen nothing, man. He said, look in the fridge. So open up the fridge. There's Ziploc bags of another alligator, already cleaned out, beautiful fillets ready for the grill, and I can't tell the rest of the story because people will kill me. Anyway, it was a free for all, and they went shooting stuff,
But I can only imagine that your life with Rob was kind of like that on a daily basis.
It was, and we both were learning a lot, but at the same time knew a lot. So we were kind of
and having
exchanging
a lot of fun.
fly ideas
Yeah.
and knots and everything else that we were doing. So,
And then, obviously both of you went on to win all these tournaments and, make a big life here in the Keys.
yeah,
I remember when I first met you, I think Flutie had just finished his 5 wins with Harry Spear, and then
4.
or 4 with Harry, and then he'd fished with you, and then you won. I don't know how we got hooked up, but it was the greatest hookup ever. All of a sudden,
so many
it's like,
ways.
I'm Andy. I'm Paul. You want to fish? Yeah. And then you became a brother for the last 20 some years.
Yeah.
You came out to Aspen and lived with me out there for a little bit, which was really kind of historical in many ways. But I got to say that fishing with you,
got to teach snowboarding because of you.
but fishing with you was really so wonderful and cool because in my first years, I was always going into the lower Keys, fishing down there with Harry, and Hoover had just started coming into play, but I'd never fished the back like we had fished together.
Right.
And you opened my eyes to the Cape and the dark water fishing and what we did. And I'll never forget, on 2 occasions I remember, we were in the back and we caught a fish, but it was a spot where this is a spot, and I don't see anything, but you guys know the structure of the bottom so well, you know where they travel. One particular tournament we were fishing in, there was a big, massive storm, and we caught a fish on the inside of Craig Key there on the inside, and we had to run north. We ran north, and we're on this point, and I said to Paul, we're looking, I can't see anything. There's nothing. It's bad weather. And I said, do they come right here? And you say, they're going to come right here. And this little bird on my shoulder said, well, they're going to come right here. Put your fly right there. And so I just started flipping my fly like this, maybe a 10-foot cast, just kind of rolling it in there and looking everywhere for a fish. But I wanted to have my fly. I thought if they're going to come here, he might be able to see my fly. If it's in the water,
Right.
they're not going to bite it if it's in my hand.
Yep.
And sure enough, like 3 minutes later, I got one. And we caught an 85-pound fish or whatever
I
it was.
think that was the winning fish in that tournament.
Yeah.
The lucky horseshoe.
Yeah. Oh, isn't it great? Yeah. It's
That
great.
never happens.
I've witnessed so many great lucky moments that, of course, that he's made his own luck because he's there and the fly's in the water and it's in the right place and it moves the right way or whatever. But things have happened that you go, oh,
How'd that
man,
happen?
how'd that happen?
Tell us a story about an Ocean Reef one tournament and you guys saw fish coming from far away.
Well,
Oh my God!
this is the end. This is the end of one of the golden flies.
Right?
And it was late. It was when golden fly was after the Gold Cup.
It was in late June.
Late June.
Not very many fish around.
So we're up, Caesar's area up there, and
You can see forever.
and-
Perfectly clear day.
and Andy and I had really, really gotten into the Red Bulls at that
We
time.
were chugging Red Bulls.
We were chugging Red Bulls, and in between.
You're bored.
Well, there's no fish coming, so there was no fish coming for hours. We're waiting on the tide to change, and we're sitting there and started chugging. I think we each had 3 Red Bulls in a row, and
That was the beginning of the Red Bull chase.
in boredom. And then all of a sudden, I see a fish I see a group of fish coming, and I'm like, Andy, here they come. They're there, 400 yards away. You know,
Here they come, and I start casting.
And he starts casting. You know,
And Paul's going, wait, we got slow down, stop.
we gotta wait.
They're 300 yards now. And I don't know how we caught a fish out of that group because I was so friggin' out of my mind.
And we did get the winning fish out of that group.
Wasn't there a lightning storm too? You guys were fishing in, and they were swimming, and
God,
Green mangrove.
Oh, that was crazy. That was crazy. That was when we didn't win. We're at Green Mangrove, and lightning storm comes. All the boats had gone in,
You can see them racing. You can see the storm come, lightning coming.
but we had never seen more fish in that spot.
Fish are coming.
ever.
Fish are coming. And Paul's going, we got to get out of here. Got to get out of here. We're going to fucking die. And the push-pole's, staked out. And Paul's trying to hide under, the pulling platform back there.
Lightning's crashing on each
Crashing.
side of the boat.
And I'm on the casting platform. I'm ripping. I'm casting and ripping. I'm going, we're going to get one. I said, if we fucking die, we die.
Exactly.
What a great way to die.
And-
But
and
the fish too were running for cover. I never got a bite, but
and-
we were in it.
How could you think that a fish wouldn't bite under those conditions? It's like it's blowing 20. It's everything's covered, and he's all in them.
Yeah, we were.
And that was the days of the toad. We were sure we had it.
Oh man,
you know?
we caught so many fish. It was just so magical fishing with you because you knew all this new country that I'd never seen, and fishing with you has always been so much fun. And then it evolved into our relationship coming out to Aspen. I remember, Paulie wanted to come out, and see Aspen. So tell us, that's your first trip to Aspen.
Yeah,
you with Jono or.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh God. So yeah, as younger single guys, I had my buddy John Yusko, who was the Burton snowboard rep out in Colorado, and we were all snowboarders and loving it. And we have I think there was a week where I called Andy and I said, Andy, I want to go out there. Why don't you come join us? Let's have a good time. And he's like, I can't go, but you guys are welcome to use the house and have at it. You got the whole place to yourselves. And so we check into the mill house, and we kind of settle in and go into town, and we're just gonna crush it this week. We got the
crush
setup.
what?
Crush anything in sight. And so we're gonna go. We got the setup with the house. We had the Range Rover to drive into town. We're styling, right? So we get into town and we go to I forgot that little Italian restaurant downstairs.
Osteria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was called
Osteria?
something different at the time.
Yeah, it was a different name then.
Yeah, but it's the same place.
And you go downstairs, and we're sitting there, and JY and I are discussing what we're going to do. What I'm going to tell them, hey, we're going to go to this club or that club for the evening. And we look up to the side, and there's a poster right next to us on the wall, and it's Gay Ski Week.
So did you go clubbing?
We saw
You ran to the club.
We saw literally the writing on the wall. It was like, this is going to be a different week than what we expected. So we just snowboarded a lot and had a great time.
I remember when I was going through my divorce and I was all curled up in a terrible mess. You came out and lived with me that winter, and I remember Paul coming back, and you would go into town. And you became a snowboard instructor for a couple of months out there.
Yeah, for Snowmass Snowboard School.
I remember you come back. I can't afford these chicks. This is a high rent district out here.
Correct.
But I remember too, driving around in the snow, coming up out of town. I had this Suburban, and driving up to Starwood was always, let's see how many times we can ricochet the back of the vehicle off the snowbanks.
It's one of the windiest short roads that I believe is in that area, and it was icy and cold, and we had just come out from town and going back to the house, and Andy puts that Suburban sideways up the mountain just on purpose. And
for sure,
I was literally wanting to climb out. I said, "Stop this car!
No,
no way,
no, don't do this. No, not again. We had so much fun.
A lot of fun.
Well, let's get back to the fishing again. Tell me about that early phase when you just started to get into the all tackle. I mean, that 1 year you were just on fire. You won the Gold Cup, the all tackle. You won a $15,000 bonefish one day winner take all. $25,000.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So we had a good run there going. We had caught in that $25,000 tournament. It was a $2,000 entry fee. It was kind of like a big gambler's day. 1 day of fishing, Biggest Bonefish takes all the money, takes the 25 grand. And Jim Bokar and I teamed up, and we had already won the all tackle. We would go out there the first flat in the morning. You got to pick a flat right away in the morning because there's 15 other guys trying to do the same thing you're doing. And so the whole downtown at the time was filled with boats, and we're within casting distance of some of the other boats. So we pull up to my favorite bank, start drifting it. I pole just a little bit, see a tail come up. Tail, it's 3 feet of water, And I said, well, must be a big fish. He tosses the crab out there. And in this tournament, you could fish as a guide also. You're fishing as a team to try to get the biggest fish. And so Jim says to me, he says, cast, put your cast out. I go, no way. I was afraid that I would mess up his great cast because he had put in just the right place.
He was an awesome fisherman.
And we were throwing cracked crabs. This is all, it's an all tackle tournament.
Sure.
So everybody was using bait and spin. And he puts it out there, and that fish tails up on the crab. And that drag just started screaming. Fish ran longer than I've ever seen a bonefish run. And he went belly up right after that. Like just
died.
I'm pulling my ass off, to get there, pulling as hard as I possibly can. And when I got up there, basically I grabbed the net and scooped him, put him in the live well. We already knew he was big enough. But when I put him in the well, I realized that it looked like he swallowed a softball. His softball in his gut was huge, So we took him in to weigh him in. And this is 7:30 in the morning, first cast in the tournament. Go in to weigh him in. He was 15.11.
Wow.
Largest, still to this day, largest fish caught in a tournament, bonefish. And we weighed him in. And unfortunately, we couldn't get any good pictures. We got one stupid picture on the way out because he's got to swim away in order for the fish to count. So back in the live well, aerators, we had the best in the aerators that we could buy. We had 3 aerators going at once, and take them out and watch them swim away, and that was it. We got one stupid picture of that fish, but it was great to do it, and we as we go by the other boats on the flats, because we go back to the spot and we sit there.
You're not even fishing.
We don't even have
how are you gonna match that?
Yeah, there's no way, and we go by Cockerham and Moeller and all the guys that were fishing in the tournament, and I believe Brewer was in that too, and we and they're like, how big? Because they want to know what they're up against, and I go 15.11, and their heads just dropped. It was over. And actually, Cockerham in that tournament did catch a 14.
And that was a $25,000 fish.
$25,000 fish.
How much do you get of that?
I got 12.
12. He split it with
12.5. Yeah,
oh, awesome.
That was our deal. And the next day I left for Colorado, go snowboarding. It was like my celebration.
That's amazing.
And you ended up winning the Best of the West.
Yes, not on that same trip, but that same year.
That summer.
Yeah. That was a great year. and my daughter was born, so all those things happen,
So the Best of the West is a fly casting contest at the Denver Trade Show.
And it's distance?
It's distance within a 6-foot pond, yeah.
And you just smoked those trout guys, didn't you?
I smoked them. It was crazy. It was one of those things that was just meant to be, because they were all fired up, all the Sage casters and the Scott Rod guys, and all the different manufacturers had their guys there that were their show casters.
Right.
And they're the kind that when they go to a contest, they strip out their line and they put their line in a pattern so that
there's no friction coming off the floor.
And all that. I didn't know about any of that stuff, So, they were all there, and Steve Rajeff was not there. So
everybody had a chance.
They all felt like they had a chance to win this one without Steve taking it all, because he wins just about every one that he's in. And then here comes Paul Tejera from Islamorada, and kind of smoked him, actually.
So good. It's so good. It's funny because most Western trout guys don't have to cast very far. So when they think they can come to the Keys and catch a tarpon and go bone fishing, they get out here and it's 20-mile-an-hour winds. You go to the Bahamas and it's blowing. Not many people understand really how to double haul into a wind and how to stop that rod and penetrate that tight loop out there.
Right. And then put us in a convention center where there's no wind.
Right.
And it feels so nice, that you can do that.
How'd you get into golf? I mean, you played tennis there for a while, I know, pretty seriously.
In my 20s.
And you got really disappointed thinking that you were going to play with my ex-wife at one point.
Yeah.
Instead of Chris Everett,
Nikki was the excuse, I think. Believe it or not. So, yeah, you're supposed to set up this match with me and Chris Everett,
right?
And so when we got back from fishing one day, and I think it was one of the days that you and I took her on the boat that morning.
Oh,
and she asked to go in.
Oh no! Remember, we were in the.
We caught 2 pigs.
Oh my God, Nikki, we're in the. And so your mom has never seen fly fishing before, right? How many tennis balls have I watched her hit over the years, right? So we're in the. This is like where the fat guys live, So we're sliding in there. I'm on the bow. Paul goes, okay, you got one going to the right. You see him at about 11 o'clock, sliding to the right. Chucked it out there. I get this fish on. Well over 100. Goes flying through the air. Whoa, boom, whoa, boom. Falls off the hook. Might have broke him. I'm shaking. Fell on my tip. I'm shaking. Not a word is said, right? I tie on another fly, and I'm still shaking. It was such a big fish. I was so excited to show your mom that I'm the man, right? So we slide down towards the creek. Here comes another fish. Slide it in there. Boom, I hook him up. Boom, boom. Going over the horizon, falls off the hook. The only thing that was said was your mom said, "You're not very good at this, are you?"
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we drifted 200 yards and
we're excited. We're excited
we
as hell.
flopped 2 fatties. So we had this big tennis match set up.
Yeah,
Paulie wanted to take on your mom.
Yeah, I wanted. I felt pretty good. Probably 30 at this point or something. I don't know, somewhere around there. And I said, I played some tennis. I want to say that at least I played her, right?
Yeah, I want to see what she's got.
So we set it up for a Chica Lodge, and we're gonna go, and at 2:00 in the afternoon or whatever it was, and I get to the tennis court, and I'm sitting there waiting, and in the distance I see her dad coming, and
he's looking for Chrissy.
No. She didn't send you in the place. No. And so
you've got your headband, your sweatband, everything on.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready. I want to take pictures,
He lost his wood.
And then I said, no, there's no way, and he said, yeah, she's got to take care of the kids. So
she was getting a fly tying lesson. And then you got into golf big time.
Got into golf for a while, and I'm still into it. I think it's a lifetime thing, and
right
because of my dad. My dad played a lot of golf, and
so So how do you go now? You've had all these great experiences in your life. You're a sportsman. You're an athlete. Fishing was huge there for that good window where you won a lot of tournaments, bonefish tournaments, all tackle tournaments, fly tournaments. Obviously the tarpon tournaments. Is there a slide out of the enthusiastic aspect of fishing and guiding because you became a realtor recently? Do you still have a passion to fish, or are you getting a little bit burned out?
Love to fish, and I love being out there. I think I like it more now than I even did before because I don't have to do it as much. And so instead of guiding those 275 days a year that I had the grind going and doing that, and it didn't feel like a grind at the time because, you know, you're 40 and 50.
That's what you're working.
Everything's
you had
great.
A job.
Yeah. And it's fun. And most days are really good. I happen to have great clients, and, you know, guys like you on the boat, we
won.
We won, and
Yeah.
and we'd catch fish, and you could kind of show off at the end of the day that, hey, we did something cool today. Yeah, it's not any less exciting. It's very exciting, and I've got still a great crew of guys that were a lot more laid back and just appreciate catching a fish, and it's not a numbers game anymore. It's just a matter of, you know, let's go get you a nice tarpon today, or let's go
enjoy the day. Let's go enjoy this.
And we're not trying to kill all the species and, you know, get one of each and get back and run all over the place and do all that. No, it's just a matter of just enjoying the day and having a good day with my guys.
What would you tell a young kid who's aspiring to be a flats guide in Islamorada in this day and age?
You know, a young kid now, he's got to be really good.
He's got to be very passionate to get good.
Very passionate. Yeah. We all have that passion for stuff, and obviously everything I've ever done, I've done because of a passion for it or wanting to get better or compete at it, you know, and the competition is great, but for the young guys now, like we said, those young guys coming up are fabulous. So they've got a lot to live up to. You know, it's tough.
Would you encourage it?
Oh yeah. It's a great lifestyle.
Let me ask you,
lifestyle.
How has Instagram and Facebook changed the game?
Oh,
if it has,
it definitely has changed the game a lot, and it's kind of
for the good or for the worse.
Well, for the good in the fact that that the exposure is there, so people know about the fishery a lot more, of course, but for the bad mostly, I think, because you know, it's a competition, and it's
mishandling a fish too, possibly because of all the photographs.
Definitely a lot of photographs out there that I object to, but you know, I've been guilty of it in the past too, because back in the day we were doing that also. You know, not to the degree now, but you know, some of the guys are posting daily videos, and some of the guys are feeling that, oh God, if I don't post a fish, they're going to think that I'm not catching anything. You know,
that I suck.
I'm not one of those, but I kind of feel like I don't need to.
Do you remember? I mean, this just came to me because it's been a long time ago. Remember that time that I grabbed that fish, and you were taking a photograph of me with this big old tarpon on the bow of your boat? So here I am. We caught this really big fish. It was probably 130 or 140, something like that. It could be any number, but it's a big fish, and I got a hold of him. And we caught fish pretty fast. I remember one fish on the Cape when we first started fishing in the first tournament. I hooked this fish, and I know it's not going to go in. It starts bouncing, but it's not running anywhere. I said to Paul, get your gaff out. I'm going to get him. And Paul says, nah, these fish fight hard. And I said, he's coming to the boat. And like right now, he was floating, and he chewed through and got away. So we were catching fish quickly. So when you grab them, when they're still kind of green, there's a lot of power. Mm-hmm. And I think we were out by 9 miles somewhere in that zip code. And I caught this really nice big fish. I said, I want to grab him. So a big fish, I used to always throw him in the boat. You know, grab you. It's the ego shot, right? So I grabbed this fish, and I'm holding him up, and Paul's taking a picture, and this fish started thrashing. And this fish threw me out of the boat.
I saw that photograph. You just see the
half in, half out. I was.
You got the bottom of my feet, and the fish is still in the boat. It's like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah,
the fish took me down.
It's amazing.
Took me
amazing
down.
What can happen.
God, we've had so many good times together over the years. What can you forecast a little bit, possibly, what you're going to see down here over the next 5-10 years?
Well, that's hard to tell this year with the whole Corona thing, how that changed, because we happened to have a great time for a couple of months when the Keys was only ours again, and it was just a few guides out fishing, and we had all the fish to ourselves for a while, and it worked out fabulous for us. And then when they opened up the doors again, everybody was let in. It seemed like tarpon season ended early this year.
Because they were here early. The
'Cause they
weather
were
was
here
too
early.
good too
Yeah.
early in February and March.
Yeah, yeah. And that's when there was no people here, so it worked out good. But I don't know. I'm always an optimist, and I always think that, nature has a way of adjusting
Healing.
to different things.
Yeah.
And I just think that people are being a little bit more careful, but we are getting an influx of more and more guides from all over the place, as are other places. We're not the only ones. Louisiana is experiencing it right now, and so is the Panhandle. They have more guides than they've ever had at any of those places, and there's guides coming in from other
And
places.
they're seasonal.
And they're
not
seasonal.
living here full time.
Correct. They're out of town guides, and they're either renting a place for the season or they're using friends' places and things like that. But I've also seen, being in the real estate business at the same time, I've also seen a lot of these guides buying places here, and it is happening. So they fall in love with the Keys and they buy a place here, and now they're a resident. They're no different than any of us that came from different places.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so it does happen, and it's
It's
can be a good
evolution,
thing.
know. But it's all good. I mean, I'll never stop fishing. I know you won't.
No.
Anyway, you're a wonderful family member, well beyond a friend.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
So
That's
thanks for joining us and sharing your wonderful life.
My pleasure. You guys are
Paul,
great.
thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
We're gonna
I
go.
love hanging with you.
Now I don't know. We're gonna go play tennis now. These two are gonna play.
I'm gonna kick his ass.
We're gonna see.
Or die
We're gonna
trying.
see. Yeah, we're gonna see what happens now. He's gonna try to make up for years of not being able to play against a family member of yours. So, yeah,
Love you, man. So
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Pleasure. Thank you.
When I saw his West Side Story.